responsible for nothing. No lines drawn in the sand. Now we're all together, we're together. Yeah, we're all together, we're together. And I don't know where the storm will blow, and I don't know if it's ours to know, but I'm home, yeah, I'm home. Roll away the storm. A desert, a lonely desert in the sun. Now I don't live for any tribe, and what's the point of any bribe? No old scores to settle, only bodies in the sand. For whom will the baby cry if the mother doesn't die? While living in a circle, holy circle full of friends.
Good evening and welcome to Plain Talk. My name is Christopher, and thank you very much for joining me over the next hour as we discuss issues of topical interest in Guyana. You might have heard earlier today it was announced that we will have first oil produced sometime in December. Actually, I'd heard from a source in one of the oil companies that it could have been as early as November. So we'll be having oil in probably November, but certainly December. And the question then will be, how ready are we? Are we ready legally, local content, regulatorily, environmentally, ready to take up our uplift of oil after it's produced? Those are some of the questions I think we will have to answer as a society over the next couple of weeks. But to bring you back this week, you might have noticed a number of political parties that have started coming up. On last night, Tuesday, 29th, the party Change Guyana announced itself with Mr. Robert Badal as the presidential candidate and Mr. Nigel Hines, the prime ministerial candidate. We've had Citizenship Initiative, Mr. Roel Johnson, and there's talk about other parties coming up to the fore with a view to participating in elections, which are scheduled to be held sometime in early next year. This evening, I have two guests, one who has been here in a different capacity before, Mr. Don Singh. He was more prominent perhaps in Rise Guyana, and then
MAPM,
MAPM. This was the
Parking
movement
meters.
against parking meters. And we have Mr. Hugh Todd, newcomer to the program,
Thank you for having me.
and Hugh is a lecturer at the University of Guyana,
Yes.
and we hope to have a good conversation. Gentlemen, what do you think? Having seen the fate of the WPA, having seen the fate of the TUF for the older generation, the TUF, after all, got 18% of the votes in the 1964 elections. Having seen the fate of the AFC, do you see any reasonable prospects for smaller parties in this political landscape? Anybody?
You go first.
All right. Thank you for having me again. And
Pleasure.
I wanted to add that I'm also a member of the civic arm of the People's Progressive Party.
Okay.
just to get the views on board with my full position. So, if you go back to our political history, Guyana has predominantly been a two-party state, and it's because of how we evolved in terms of our political history. And if you look at the demographics and how we evolved coming out of the 60s into the 70s and 80s, it has been a very polarized environment where you had a large block, predominantly Indians following the PPP, large block, black, predominantly focusing on the support to the PNC. And I don't want to go through the ramblings of all of that because it's widely distributed in the literature.
Sure.
But when you look at what is happening currently, we can argue that there is a lot of discontent. The PNC has managed over the years to co-opt smaller parties, and they did it with the UF. And we saw what happened when they were able to bring Digar on board, and Digar eventually resigned and did the right thing. What we're seeing here is history repeating itself.
Is it? You mentioned in one case the UF and Peter Digar. In this particular case, the government, the APNU or the PNCR, they take credit for saying that, look, this is a multi-party coalition.
In
So
form,
are you
in form, not in substance. I think they've already crafted their philosophy. Their philosophy is domination as a party, they're not about being plural, and they're not about being inclusive.
But isn't it true though, Mr. Todd? This has been the largest group of parties in government since 1966.
But you have to peel off the layers. When you say largest group, in numerically speaking, yes. But in terms of support from the base, the
Substance.
constituency, no. That's not the case. If you look at some of the parties and you ask them how many persons voted for them, probably themselves and a close family member. So they do not represent 51% of the population. They don't.
I personally think it's a facade at this moment. It's the PNC. There's no other coalition. AFC has died a natural death. The WPA is like a 5 or 10 people party. It's the PNC.
Now, are we being premature in announcing the death of the AFC?
No.
The AFC is, in fact, if the reports in the media are reliable, the AFC is standing up to the APNU and saying, look, we want our fair share in any coalition
And they will be
arrangement.
My view on this is that if you're looking at the political party and you want to determine whether they have substance or not, you have to go back to the constituency. It's a democracy we're in. So your survival is dependent on support from the people. And once you get into politics, you have to accept. On the one hand, you can be accepted, and on the other hand, you can be rejected. And the numbers show that the AFC has been rejected by their constituency. If you go back to local government elections last November, the numbers don't lie. They have diminished in terms of their political value, and they have not been able to deliver as a strong third force for the people, because they figured that would have been that balance of power, and they have not been able to do that. They were co-opted into the PNC, and they followed the mantra of the PNC, and that is troubling. And their supporters are disgruntled. They're dissatisfied.
Their supporters have gone home. A lot of their supporters were disgruntled PPP supporters, perhaps, and they've gone home.
Don, you come from a long-established political family. Jainarine Singh was your dad.
He was actually general secretary of both parties, PNC
right.
and the PPP. Weird sounds.
That's interesting.
Are you planning to reinvent?
No, not at all.
But
I'm not a politician.
so you yes, you have dabbled in civil society.
Yes.
The rise you've dabbled in the movement
MAPM,
is yes.
yes.
But you come from a political family. Did you see the AFC being set up in 2018 when it was told, look, you go and fight local government elections on your own?
It's not so much of being set up; they were thrown to the dogs because after 2016 into 2017, AFC had run their course. They were no more, and the PNC are astute politicians, and they have astute politicians within their ranks. They knew the AFC was dead, so this was a lead up to this. This was telling you, oh, you think you have power, you think you're going to get this. Show us your constituency, and they failed miserably.
But is it suicidal for the APNU to ditch the AFC at this stage? Because of the optics, if nothing else.
Okay, let's go back to the genesis of it. When the AFC, my view, when the AFC and the PNC, along with the other smaller parties, came together to form this umbrella movement, the underpinning reason was to get rid of the PPP.
Yes.
It was not based on a philosophical
Joining.
plan to move the country forward. They were waiting in the wings to be able to grab power. When they grab power, that's the end of it. So it was a debt in itself getting that victory, because that victory was just a charade and a plan to be able to hold on to power. And we saw what happened after the elections. They moved swiftly to control the elections machinery.
Subsume them, yes.
So we can follow the path of the PNC, the party that has been dominating the coalition movement.
But
And
it is the largest party in government, so it would be expected to dominate, wouldn't it?
it should not have been that way.
Why not?
Because if you're talking about being inclusive, and if you're talking about being a coalition front, then you'll have to give up power to in order to bring society together. This is not about being the largest party based on numbers. This is about satisfying the good of the people of Guyana. So if you're taking the view of we're really the largest party, so we should have the lion's share, then it's a zero-sum game you're playing.
Yeah.
And once you're doing that, then you're actually telling the people that you really don't care about them. You care about keeping your party in power, and that is what we've been seeing with the actions and inactions of the PNC.
Yes.
Don, you Todd, talked about it, two parties, but two-party system is not unknown in most countries.
It's
If
dominant
you-
in the Caribbean.
In the US, well, in the US, in the UK, yes, you have the liberal Democrats, but essentially conservative and Labour
Yes.
in
Right.
the United States,
Yes.
in Barbados, in
Yes.
in
Jamaica.
Jamaica,
Yes. Trinidad.
Trinidad,
And this
Antigua. It's
jump high, jump low. This is where we're going. PNC, PPP. This. I mean, you alluded to earlier in your opening question in terms of third parties. It's nice. It's courageous. It's all right. It's a democratic, front. But it's this election in 2020. Hopefully, it's 2020. Is PNC and PPP. There's no other way.
and this is based on the demographics and based on the support
Yes.
for the two parties. Generally speaking, if you talk to anyone, and if you look at the AFC, it's a breakaway fraction from both the PNC and the
Yes.
PVP. If you look at now the smaller parties, they were part of the AFC. So what you're getting is a fragmentation. There's no building. They're not adding value.
Well, you still have the WPA holding
Well,
its own.
I don't know
Really.
The Justice for All Party.
How do
Are
we
you
ju-
dismissing those parties?
Yes, I am dismissing
Why?
those parties because they do not. They have not. Haven't. When last have they proven that they had a constituency? When last have they run by themselves?
Are you
or-
playing the numbers game there?
in terms of what? How do you-
By discounting, say, the value of the WPA. The WPA likes
Chris,
to say it represents
Chris,
the cream of the
No, Chris,
intellect.
politics is about numbers.
Politics is about
It's about numbers. If you don't have support of the people numerically, it is difficult. It is difficult to convince any right-thinking person that you are desirable. It's about numbers. It's not about flavor. It's not advertising and marketing. It's about substance.
That's
If
a paradox.
if people are not following you, then you're being rejected. And if you look at the WPA shot itself in the leg when it decided to join with the PNC, something that the founder would not have tolerated. And if you follow the philosophy of founder, it runs deep in any institution, whether it's public or private.
Yes.
And if you move away from the philosophy that was set up by the founder, then you will you remove yourself from the objectives that you're trying to achieve, and you will not be able to have a good showing. The reason why the PPP has been able to use its face boldly is because it's still living up to the principles and values set out by its founder. And that is something that we have to look at. We're dealing with institutions,
yes.
Chris, right? And if you're dealing with institutions, you're dealing with whether or not they have the capacity and the ability to follow through on their vision. If you don't have that, then we'll be arguing
Till the cows come
baselessly.
home. Yeah.
Well, let's get back to where we started. And the question of the Change Guyana.
Mhm.
A highly successful entrepreneur, in many ways self-made, didn't have the backing like of several other of our own pioneers. Robert Badal,
Mhm.
Nigel Hines, two persons who can't be dismissed as not having substance. Are you saying that you see no future for Change Guyana
It's the
in this
mood,
political
the
milieu of
mood
Guyana?
of the people currently. There is no space for them currently.
So
Maybe
was-
2025, maybe 2030, but currently there's just no room for them. As with the Citizenship Initiative, as with ANUG, as with the New Movement, as with all these parties that are sprung up, there's just no room. This is a straight PNC PPP fight. Maybe in 2025 or further down the line, there will be space and there will be room and there will be ideas.
Look,
4 months, 5 months before election, no.
you talk about ANUG. It has excellent leadership. Ralph Ramgran has more. It's
Yes,
real pedigree in terms of
yeah,
politics.
absolutely.
But Timothy Jonas, your own colleague here, would.
Yeah.
So apparently the MAPM gone.
Well,
The flock has been.
been separated.
Yeah. Why would a responsible electorate turn its back on people like Badal and Ralph Ramgran and Timothy Jonas, Ruel Johnson, perhaps?
Chris, like any institution, you have to have a track record, right? If you
Well,
look
how
at-
do you get it?
you have to start somewhere,
Yeah.
but it's about timing, right? If these political parties started their movement in 2011, for
Or
the 2011
even
elections,
2016.
2015,
2015,
or
2016, right.
then you would have been able to generate some amount of momentum. Electioneering is about momentum, Chris. It's about momentum. It's about being able to convince people that you would be the best option. Now, if you look at the political landscape, it's already been decided. So it's not a buffet. It's already been decided.
That's a good one.
It's over. So there's no meal on the table for you. So you're coming into an environment where there's nothing for you, not even the scraps. Everything has been taken up because the scraps will go to the AFC. That's it. That's the end of it.
Are you saying our electorate is so blinkered?
No, I'm not saying that the electorate is not informed and they're not aware of the issues and they can't make an informed decision. I'm saying they've been looking at the political landscape. They've seen the performance of the APNU plus AFC. They've seen the performance more so of the PPPC in opposition. This has been a very good time for us in opposition because we have been able to demonstrate through our leadership that we are responsible, that we're ethical, that we have integrity, and we're able to highlight the issues that people need to understand. And I also want to jump in here to say that the media has not been on our side. The media has not been intrusive, and they've not been playing the role that it should have been playing as the fourth estate. And that has left us, and the opposition quite rightly said, that the PVP has been doing all the heavy lifting, and this is so true. And we have to understand that if you want a system to evolve, one party can't do it alone. We've been doing it since the 1950s. Come on, we need help too.
Well, you have the numbers, but don't you see? You need help. Don't you see these parties like Change Guyana, ANUG, maybe the Liberator, what's it called? The
Justice, Mr. Schuman.
Yes,
Right.
Mr. Schuman's party. Don't you see those parties helping to inform the electorate, providing a useful function?
No. Resounding
Yeah.
no. You know why? We are still in a no confidence period.
But
right?
that doesn't mean that you can't
but Chris,
contribute to
they
a
came
discussion.
out. No, they came out and they're not taking up the issue at hand. The issue here is about the defense of democracy. Chris,
Yes.
in this modern era, we're talking about defending democracy and our democratic institutions when we should be competing based on policy and programs. What are you telling me? If you're saying that these political parties have a role to play, then they should have jumped in, hit the ground running, and join us and say, listen,
Yes.
we are supporting the PPP on this particular issue because it's mutual interest we're dealing with. This is an interest that concerns the entire population. So you can't say that you're a serious political party. Here is a big issue in front of us, and you're not coming on board to say, I will join you in this fight.
And
What's
I-
this big issue?
Whose big issue?
What? Well,
No, I mean, I actually been to all of these launchings of these political parties, and they will tell you that they want constitutional reform, this, that, and the other, but they're not telling you exactly what part of the constitutional reform. It's just
Soundbites.
a broad, it's a
Soundbites.
soundbite thrown out
Soundbites.
there.
Chris.
I mean, as Hugh says, we are in a no confidence period, and what has happened, the behavior of the David Granger government since the no confidence motion last year, December 21st, has backed the electorate into corners. You've picked a side, including myself. I was in civil society doing this, that, and the other. And I says, you know what, I cannot sit on the fence because I see an encroaching dictatorship. And I says, I have to take a stand. Because if that is allowed to grow, then we will all lose.
Isn't dictatorship too strong a word to use?
No, not in my.
Why not?
Because I'll tell you what. It's been creeping and creeping for a long time now. I mean, even as today,
Nobody's objecting.
Well, that is the issue. Why is nobody objecting? I mean,
Because maybe the government is popular.
do you think so?
No, I'm saying it's a possibility.
Well, maybe they are cowed in or retreated into a period of okay, I will speak at the poll.
Let me ask you this: Are we more democratic now than we were in 2015, as a country?
Of course not.
Is that a real question, sir?
Yes.
No, I don't.
Of course
certainly don't
not.
think so.
How can we be democratic? We are. Listen, we are fighting for individual freedom. We are fighting to restore that. That is a fundamental right. How can we be democratic? We are fighting to allow our democratic institutions to work in the interest of the people. How can we be democratic, Chris? It's. I mean, unless you're delusional or unless you're a blind follower, right? You have to understand this is real.
He didn't mean it personally. Don't
No,
worry.
not speaking to you. I'm speaking to
I-
us.
I know that, I
and
know
the people at large. This is real, and it will affect our lives for the next generation to come.
It's all these fanciful interpretations of the Constitution that we have foisted upon us by the president now. I mean, it started with the GCOM chairman and his interpretation, and suddenly we need a lawyer, we need somebody judicial, and it has ended up into 1066, whereas cabinet can meet because the CCJ says no gloss, but that means it's
Do
all
we
good.
The
Do we want?
CCJ, and I say this as a lawyer, the CCJ has been disgraceful.
You think so?
Absolutely, yes. I think the CCJ has been cowardly.
Have they been cowardly by expecting us to act as mature individuals?
The point about a court is not to leave when a matter comes before it.
Mhm.
It's to act decisively. The CCJ has left this country in limbo.
I have a different view, though. And I'm taking it from.
Well, let me just
Go
make the
on.
point. Right? I'm not because it's on the same issue. Claudette Singh, Justice Claudette Singh, who is now chairperson of GCOM,
Mhm.
in the Esther Pereira case, compelled the then government to hold elections by a particular date. Why can't the CCJ do the same thing? Or why should they not? Haven't they contributed to this state of uncertainty in which we find ourselves?
To answer that, I would say life is not always fair and equal.
No, I'm not asking for very. I'm asking for just. I'm asking to
and-
make a decision that comes before you.
And I believe that if we had a CCJ in place when the Esperer matter came up, we might have had a different decision. But I think you have to look at it in context, too, Chris. You have to look at the political climate and the political reality of Guyana. And the judges of the CCJ know that all too well. They are relying on your value system to work and to kick in. That is why they said, listen, you have to show integrity, you understand the judgment, and you need to go and do the right thing. No, I don't think they wanted to create confusion by getting involved in our political environment. They wanted to remove
that
let
is
the
what they
judiciary.
were called upon to do.
But it was clear. The pronouncement was clear.
No. You can't say it was. If it was that clear, then why hasn't it been resolved?
Because
now the fact is this. I want to show you. You know, the CCJ must have observed what happened at the UK Supreme Court when a Guyanese woman, Gina Miller, took Boris Johnson to court after Boris Johnson had prorogued the House of Commons and called on the Queen to support him. That's how courts operate. Courts don't sit on fence.
Chris, that's why I say we have to take it in context. You're dealing with a mature democracy. The United Kingdom has led the world in terms of advancing democratic values and rights, coming out of the 17th,
Well, I hope it
18th
wouldn't take
century.
us another 200 years to do
we
it.
are 300 years behind the UK.
Oh, Christ, but please don't tell me that.
It is a reality.
No, but surely.
Yeah, so when we compare our
surely we
system,
can learn. Surely we
can learn, but we can't learn. We can't learn by just adopting. We have to learn by adjusting and evolving naturally. And I believe it's a good thing for us still. We're evolving as a society. It's still a young democracy.
So
we have to be optimistic.
You're glad that our court refuses to act decisively
I'm not saying that
in a serious democratic issue.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm still taking it in context that we're still a maturing democracy. We still have a lot of issues on the ground to deal with.
I thought you said we're into dictatorship. You now tell me we're into maturity.
It's a creepy dictatorship. You
don't think it's creeping?
I think it's here.
And I'm saying
when a president walks around with 120 security,
that's intimidation. That's
intimidation. It's intimidation. when a president calls peaceful protesters hooligans and sets up two mile perimeters around wherever he's going, that is paranoid. That tells me that generalismo is a little crazy.
I think we have to.
Sorry.
I think we have to be optimistic. I don't think we should do more problem solving than lament it.
When we are worse than we were 5 years ago, you're telling me we should be optimistic.
We have to be because the people, Chris, the people will always win. If you look at dictatorships and dictators throughout Latin America and Africa and in Asia, the people will always win. Some people will have to suffer the consequences of the day, but the people will always win.
You think in Indonesia the people have won? You think in Brazil the people with that crazy man they got there? You think the people have won? You think the people
you get the president you deserve?
You think the people in the United States have won with Trump?
That is how democracy works. You put them in, you hire them, and then you fire them. So you can't. They're not there for life. If you hire them and then you realize that you know what they've not hold true to what they said they would have done, you have another election cycle to get rid of them. What is happening in this country is that this government is fearful of being fired. No, you were hired and you were happy. You have to accept being fired as well. That is how democracies evolved. That is how we mature as a society. So the fear for this government is, listen, we were about to be fired. And they're trying to buffer against going to the people as a servant to be fired by your master, which is the population.
Okay, you're saying we must be optimistic,
Yes.
and yet you're saying you're absolutely pessimistic about these political parties.
No,
including
I'm talking about the reality. The reality is that they are fearful of coming out of office. What I'm saying is that I'm optimistic because the people will speak, and the people have already decided. The government is already mentally out of office. If you look at how they're operating,
absolutely.
they're not operating as if they have the momentum. They're operating as if they're scared, and if they're and they're fearful of meeting the people on March 2nd. And that is why I'm saying we have the power, and we have to understand that they don't have the power. We can't have 27 persons plus one taking control of the rest of the population. We have the power, and we know that, and they know that too.
But surely, I mean, you're an academic man, academia.
No, I'm speaking as a layman.
No, you're not only a layman. Don't bring it to me. You can't say that they are in any way afraid the way the government operates. It knows it has no legitimacy, let alone legality, and it continues to spend, to travel, to talk, to dictate, as much as it would have had it been
A normal cycle.
circumstance.
Yeah, but that is to give you that is to make the population feel as if everything is okay and everything is
But
fine.
that is not fair, then,
Right?
is it?
No, of course it's not fair. It's deception.
I talk about FEAR. You're saying they're afraid.
Yeah.
I'm saying no, not the way they're.
Of course they're afraid. You're dealing with human beings. You're not dealing with robots. Of course they're looking at the reality. They know that they're losing. They've lost power since the Charandas sided with the opposition, which represents the people of Guyana. He did not do it for himself. He did it on behalf of us. We have directed the National Assembly to do exactly what they did. And this is how we have to see the no confidence motion. This is not one man deciding that I'm going to be a Judas. This is we have instructed him. By our actions, we let him know that we are unhappy and we want to have early elections. That is what that representation
And
is.
the government says no, you're not having it because of the machinations with GCOM,
Delay tactics.
with
and-
whatever instrument of state they found necessary. They recruited that instrument on their side, and here we are.
But you know what, Chris? They don't have time on their side. You can wiggle and jiggle as much as you want. Time will overcome you. Time and the people. And time is a very precious resource, and they don't have that on their side. We have it on our side.
Now, you did say that both of you are
Civic.
members of the
Very loud and
civic
proud.
Yes, I am.
civic arm.
Yes.
But Don,
Yes.
you were one
One.
of those who accused the PPP
Yes.
with great conviction
Yes.
of all kinds
Yes.
of wrongdoings.
Yes. In
How
20,
come-
2013,
you-
2014.
Couple years later, I mean, you might very well change in the next couple of months.
No, not at all. I'm not going to change.
What has caused this transformation?
When, as it says on another program, in 2014, 2015, when we were fighting against the PPP to remove the PPP, we did not look at what we were putting in. The object was to get rid of the PPP. The object was not like, okay, we did not look forward. Well,
didn't
I
think it
personally,
through.
I did not think it through. I mean, I did not look to see what was coming in. I knew the PNC was coming in. And I did have some hope in the AFC. So I thought, well, this is something I embraced. But I was blindsided by the fact that the PPP had gotten out of contact with the people and had become arrogant. And I've told the leaders this when we had our conversations prior to me joining the Civic. And they quietly might have agreed with me on
So
that.
your position, your views on the PPP, as it then was, the PPP as it then was, and its conduct, have your views changed about the PPP of the 2015?
Well, we have had close to $1 billion worth of COIs into corruption. The Director General said $100 billion a year was going out through gold or otherwise. And here we are, 4.5
Director
years
General,
later.
that was Clive Thomas.
Was that Clive Thomas?
Clive Thomas talked about
I
billions
thought it
and
might have
billions.
been Mr. Harmon, but okay,
Maybe
if it was
made
Clive.
some mention.
I mean, we hear these things like $100 billion, and we're at that point willing to accept. Oh my God, what kind
And
of
he
corrupt-
has all the power to do it now, and he can't find a thing.
and can't find a thing.
Begging
now
people,
it's-
come and settle for
Forensic audits as well. Forensic.
Yes.
That's very costly.
You having a go at me now?
But I mean, here we are, 4.5 years later, heading into election, and there's nothing.
Are you
There's-
saying that this is what has changed your mind?
Ultimately, yes. I've looked. I mean, I would not vouch for the PPP, and they can defend themselves. I am with the civic. I am bridging a gap. I am bringing ideas to them from civil society, from
But,
the
but
regular.
who is the civic? Civic has no say in the party, really. There's
Well,
no.
so why
there-
are we here?
Why are we here?
I don't. You're here because you're my guest. Right? That's why you're here.
And we're representing that arm as
Well,
well.
see, this is what we're
No, but
resuscitating.
what I'm saying-
something that had
What I'm
fallen
saying,
dormant for a while.
Is there a formal relation? What is the civic? Is there a constitution? Who speaks for the civic? What is the civic's formal and informal relationship with the PPP?
It is an informal relationship. There's no hierarchy. There's no stepping up and down. These are ideas that we
May not be stepping up and down, but I'll put you up or down and put you down tomorrow if you step out of line. That's the danger you face, is it?
This is how I see the civic, and that's why I like the model that they're using. The civic represents the entire civil society. It's not just the people that you see in the spotlight or at the Freedom House or at the leader of the opposition's office. It is representative of the entire society. So we can interface with people within the society, and we can spread the word on the party's policy and programs, right? And where we want to take the country. So because it's so large in scope, it may seem as if it's disorganized, but it's not disorganized. It's very organized, because we still respect the civic as the PPP as the leadership, and the PPP is a well-oiled machinery.
Oh yes.
So we're on board with a machinery that is well-oiled, well-institutionalized, and understands how to create wealth and prosperity. And where else would you want to be? We have a record that we can defend, and that is important in politics.
But the PPP is a left-wing party, is a socialist party, and as
The party has evolved.
it's
2019.
evolved into
Look,
what? Evolved
no.
into what? So are you saying it has turned its back on the working class?
No,
That it's-
not at all.
Its ideological and philosophical anchors have suddenly been
No,
been
not at all.
detached.
The party is still about the working class. That's how it started, right? Being about the working class is being able
But
to
you don't
move-
hear the leadership of the party talking about working class much these
Well, they
days.
talk about policies and programs that speak to the entire population, which includes the working class. You cannot lead the working class. That is the largest number of any
And it's numbers.
demographic,
Yeah.
right? So we are still about the working class. So don't worry with the suits and the ties and the fancy looks. We're still about the working class. What, you want us to walk around in slippers and
Actually,
holy
I
pants?
do. I do too.
I,
wear slippers
you
on
know,
and
you know,
slipper
you're having a go at me. I have slippers on.
I mean, we're about that. And if you
Let me tell you this: nothing is wrong with walking around with slippers.
I
No,
want
I'm
slippers
just the stigma that is attached to people with a holy pants and a dingy
Yeah,
shirt
but,
and
but
slippers.
tell me something.
Uh-huh.
All of these people who walk around, who move with jacket and tie, and I'm not talking about the legal profession now. Some of them are white-collar criminals.
You want to be more specific?
I don't know where you're going
Well,
with this, so
it's very
I
broad.
Money
Generalization.
laundering, tax evasion. I can be as specific as that.
well,
So
Why is
and
anybody-
not only that, on a more serious level, I think politics ought to be about your fellow citizens, to bring everyone up.
Of course. And
But here it is. Some of these policies you're hearing, oh, we must give this and we must give that.
Oh, they-
It's as though everything is about business people, as though they're going to solve the problems of this country. Well, Michael Milliken didn't solve the problem. Maxwell didn't solve the problem. All these.
let's see.
so you're taking a swipe at Mr.
No.
Badal? And
No, not
Okay.
at all, not at all.
You're-
I'm saying, if you think if we think, and look at the US, Trump with all his tax breaks. You saw the numbers come out today. The US economy is slowing down. It's like you give a tax break, there's a hike, there's a high, and then what happens the morning after?
The U.S. economy is a very mature and very advanced economy, and they're able to get pits and troughs and peaks without disrupting the entire economy. 90% of the economy is urbanized. It's an unshakable economy. So I mean,
it's a what?
Unshakable. It's a huge economy.
In 2008,
it still is. It still is.
Let me tell you something.
It's still rebounding. It's still rebounding.
No.
And that's why I prefer to compare Guyana with the rest of the Caribbean. From the time we start talking about, look at the US, look at Canada,
the context. I was saying that when you talk about policies, if you don't talk about bridging that wide chasm, that gap between the haves and the have-not, the PPP of Chedi Jagan is not the PPP of today. What the PPP stood for then, I don't think it stands
Nothing
for
has changed. If you remember, Chris, the world economy has changed dramatically from the 60s to now.
Yes.
We're living in a market-driven economy. We're living in an economy where we depend on investors and the
you
private
know what a
sector
market-driven
to drive
economy
economies.
means? That
there are a lot of
the powerful will survive.
No.
Is that what you want?
No, but that is how you create wealth. You create wealth by incentivizing.
By killing.
No, you're not killing. You're creating employment when people become more. When people begin to expand and become more prosperous, they employ more people. They innovate, right? They create. They be more creative, and you're able to lift people. That is how we work. It's a competitive environment. We have to strive to get to a level where we can compete on the global market scale, on a global scale. What is happening now?
In what? In oil? In gold? Those are not. You don't have to compete over anything. Those prices are fixed.
Yeah, we have comparative advantage and obviously world market prices dictate what earnings we get. But we can still add value, and to do that, you have to depend on the private sector. Government's role is really to policy making, law and order, and to ensure that the society is free, fair,
so
and transparent.
the government should not be
fair.
the government should
And
not
free
be
from fear.
the government should not be in any economic activity. Then
Should not be in business.
The PPP should say sell out all the sugar estates, sell out Guyana,
No,
sell out
that's for
national
national
shipping.
interest. That's obviously you have national interest issues that you have to deal with. I mean, we can't have the discussion will be too lengthy here, but clearly, governments still will have to be responsible, and especially small economies. We still control
That's the point I'm
electricity.
making.
We
That's
still
the point
control
I'm making.
water.
That in a country like this, for decades still to come.
But Chris, you know what has been bugging us? We have not had, as a political party, an equal competitor to lift this country. And Barjagi was completely right. We've been carrying the load from the time we came into independence, all through the decades, and we're still doing it today. What we need is healthy competition at the political level. So if we have healthy competition, we will lift our standard in terms of how we compete.
Where do you expect this competition to come from?
It comes from the people's determination as to what is good and what is not good. If people start realizing that, listen, we cannot support a government that does not represent our interests. You know how fast the coalition government would start to make adjustments. Why do you think they started running around the place trying to pull their pants up after the no confidence motion? Because they recognize the people are serious and they're not going to stick for the nonsense. So they started running around, spending money, meeting the people, shaking hands, holding fairs. Why do you think they did that? They did that because they recognize that they have to start behaving like a responsible government. But it's too short.
It's too late.
And we know that it's not coming from a caring perspective.
I come back to this, the PPP and the civic. The civic is civil society, but we know the more vocal of civil society are the business class and the intellectual class.
No, I don't agree. I beg to differ.
So where's this? Who would be your prominent members of
we
civic?
have a lot of silent people in the
Well,
background
these
who
silent
may not,
people,
who may
this
not
time they
want
come
to.
out, they're
Yeah.
silent, they're invisible.
We know the reality of this political environment. You know, people have kids
People are afraid
in
of
school, at
victimization.
work.
People are afraid of
Yeah,
all
it's-
kinds of
it's-
things.
It's
And
not
yet,
easy.
and yet you say that we're democratic.
Yeah, we are. We listen. We
I didn't
Chris,
say that.
Chris, we have democratic
Your partner
institutions.
washing.
No, we have democratic institutions, but the way the government of the day is behaving is undemocratic. So the government is not the state. They don't control everything. This is just an arm of the state. And the government's behavior is undemocratic. But we still have democratic institutions that were set up that they're trying to undermine.
You know what is frightening? In 2015, as Don said, we all thought, this is what we need.
Without thinking it
Now,
through.
now, listen, forget the thinking through. And just a few years later,
Yes.
and despite what David Hines is now saying and so on, they will all say the words like disappointment. Now stronger language is coming out. That cannot be a democratic system that allows things to go that badly that quickly.
Yeah, because what they've done too, Chris, is that when they got into power, they created a bloated bureaucracy and they enlarged the arm of government or the arms of government to reach into every strata of society. That is why they started to build up themselves into that on that scale, because what they wanted to do is to capture the economy. You have to remember that when the PNC was in its heyday, they controlled nearly 80% of the economy. They control the factors of production. They don't anymore, and it's something that a reality that is actually now kicking in. So when the president said before he came into office that he was going to create jobs, I think he was actually believed that he could have done that because they created jobs when they were in power, almost full employment, until we had to go through structural
ERP.
adjustment, right? Which was actually prescriptions we had to adhere to. So they are still disconnected.
By the way, the PPP carried through with those
The ERP.
same ERP, yeah?
Yeah.
But Chris, we have to make it clear to the people of Guyana. This is not something that the PNC started. This is something that came out of a Washington consensus, this is a
But we
Washington-based
didn't have to
initiative.
accept it.
We-
We did
But
not have
we
to
were
accept
we were dead broke. We were a hippie country.
Broke, hungry,
How
and
was it?
destitute.
Famine would have
Okay,
crept in.
did the PPP
We had
have
no
to,
choice.
Did the PPP have to accept it as well?
The PPP would have been willing to accept it because we were in opposition for 28 years. We wanted to rebuild the economy. We've been rebuilding the economy from the time we came into power, and look what we did in terms of in terms of all the development, infrastructure. Look at schools, hospitals. We have done a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of trying to create a better quality of life and standard of living for the people of Guyana.
I come back to the smaller parties.
I think you like the smaller parties a lot.
I
very
like
sexy.
I like the idea of democracy. I think the more people are prepared to exercise their democratic rights,
To put themselves
the
out
better.
there.
Yes, and it takes some courage.
Yes.
Are you opposed to the parties like ANOG, the citizens? Was it Citizenship Initiative?
Of course not.
The change. Is that you see them as a threat to the monolithic dominance of which
Of which party?
the party you support?
Which party? No.
Well, you dominate. Look, you either are all one, or there's a monolithic government and a monolithic opposition. So you are that powerful opposition.
Right.
It's a two-party state, but the thing about it is that the PPP has demonstrated from the time we came into being that we were a superior party, looking after the interests of the ordinary man. Now, what
And
we're
woman.
seeing,
Be politically correct.
man and woman, citizens, the people of the nation, and the parties that you see coming to the fore now, it's a good thing for democracy because what it is showing is that people are being empowered and people are willing to take that bold step and to present themselves to the people as an option. right? It's a good thing because what it does is that it broadens the conversation, and hopefully it will deepen the conversation where we can get to the core issues that are affecting us. What I'm optimistic about is that with these new parties, we can start moving away from race politics. I'm hoping that they can help us because we are always about being inclusive. I'm hoping that they can help us to diffuse that tension of race voting.
So should you be working closer with those smaller parties?
I think we can talk.
And how?
We can definitely talk. As I said,
Why is it talk? I mean, the guy is famous
Well,
for talking. Plain talk is talk.
Have discussions on the way
Have
forward.
discussions.
together.
I know Mr. Badal, I know Ruel Johnson, I know Mr. Schumann, I know Mr. Ramkaran. So you bridge gaps, and I absolutely love that these third parties are coming out. These are parties that are going to evolve. Some will not even make nomination day. Because it's a hard thing. 6 regions and 325. It's not easy to get on the ballot. So a few will drop away, but personalities and ideas and stuff will evolve, and these persons will be the ones going forward that are sharing ideas. So it is good to have people actually coming out the woodwork, because I'll tell you, a lot of people are afraid right now, are so scared of victimization. A lot of people who would want to come and protest with me for whatever reason, they says, hey, I deal with you in spirit, buddy, but I can't come out there. I'm going to lose my job. I got to go home to see the neighborhood I live in and get breakdown. These are realities.
But can you really have change and development if people are not prepared to oppose what is wrong and support what is right?
It's a complex web, but I want to go back to that point quickly, if I may.
Sure.
If I could. When we look at the number of parties coming on board now, it's a clear representation that the government of the day has actually failed the people. This did not happen in 2006, 2001, 2006, 2011, even 2015. Why in 2019 you're having all of this? Clearly, what you're seeing here is a clear case where this government of the day is not being able to look after the interests of people, and these are persons who were more sympathetic towards this government. So it's a clear representation of the people that listen. If you want to understand how much this government would have failed you, people who actually supported this government in 2015 are now going it alone. So if the people can follow them as well, it would help to reinforce what we've been saying all the time too. So they're actually supporting us indirectly through the formation of these parties.
How seriously you think Badal's launch of the Change Guyana will affect the AFC?
I think it will. As I was there, you were there last night. I had a good look at it. The presentation was well done. Everything was polished and well prepared. This tells me that this party will spend a lot of money on their way to wherever they need to get. They're very professional in what they do. I had a good look around. I see some perhaps financiers within their group.
Talking about elitism?
No, not at all. I mean, but in this era, you have to spend money to get votes. Yes, AFC, as I said, it's for me, it just betrayed everyone, and they're dead. They are pieces to be picked up. So these days you don't go and put a flag up on a post anymore. You spend money on social media and newspapers. You get your word out that way. It's like a Ross Perot kind of documentaries and infomercials and these kind of things.
You're saying the AFC is dead, but it still commands a significant part of the government of the country, and it's likely to continue.
No, why do you think so?
Because
Why?
I think the AFC has set some red lines. It has made it very clear that the Prime Minister's slot belongs to it. I was very surprised last night. I was a top PNC man. He blamed the AFC for everything, and the animosity that came out. I was a little bit surprised.
President Granger is going to push the AFC right over the cliff into the sea.
You know
He's
how
not going to back down.
the only way I see the AFC could have survived is going back to the no confidence vote. When Charandas walked, if they had walked as well, they probably would have survived and come back again.
Is it too late for them to do this now? To
Yes.
say, look, we went with this government. We support coalition. It brought good, but we were left hanging, and it's time that we restore our independence. Do you see a chance for that?
I don't see it at all. Their last chance was when President Granger started with his machinations of the Constitution. That is when they should have stood up and said, hey, stop that. Stop it. You know, we will walk if
You don't
don't
think the
stop it."
Guyanese electorate is a forgiving electorate?
Perhaps they are, but the amounts
Because
of...
remember in 2011, they really did support the AFC.
Yes, they did. But who supported? What is the demographic that supported the AFC, do you think? It would be the middle class, the teachers, perhaps, they're a little bit, more educated. More enlightened.
Yeah.
And we, including myself, we've seen. It's like, no way. That I will never go back to that. Never.
I think it's a little too late, and I think their actions really show that they were just there to get some
To
of
get
the
power.
sweet of being
Power.
in power, because they had many opportunities to walk as a group, and they never did that. They saw the violations coming one after the other, and they stuck around because to me they just wanted to get into office to enjoy some of the fruits of their so-called hard labor, and I think the people looked at that and recognized that they never really had our interest at heart. If they did, they would have walked long time ago. Look, Patterson being appointed unilaterally, they could have walked then.
Yeah.
They could have walked with the $80 million US was hidden from the public for 1 year. They had many opportunities, Chris.
What is it about you politicians that power seems to have such hold you so spellbound
No.
in a trance?
Politics is about power, but it's how you use it.
Politics
Nothing
is about service, isn't it?
Yeah, but it
It
gives
is
you
about
power. It gives you power over the people. The people give you that power over them to look after their interests.
Yeah.
But you have to know how to use it. If you misuse it, like what is happening now, you'll get these types of
You know,
consequences.
I-
But you can't remove power from
I don't
politics.
consider myself a politician, and I don't think I ever will. This is
A member of the
The
civic
civic.
arm of the
right.
PPP, the opposition
Why
party.
should I have to be a politician? I provide ideas. I bridge gaps. I bring people together. I don't
have to be part of a formal political arrangement.
In
to do
Guyana,
that.
you do. That's
So
the
you
only way
think civil society is irrelevant?
it's not irrelevant. It's dormant. They have not been active. They're not pushy. They're not enough civil society movements who are active enough to say this is what we want. This is what the people want.
There's history behind that.
There was a time when it was thought that Rise was becoming
That's
a
your thing.
political
Yes.
party. Yes. What happened? What has happened to Rise?
Reform, inspire, sustain, educate. That was Rise.
Which one you did? You succeeded in doing.
Reform.
I think we did a little bit of everyone. I think we mostly educated though, because we had public nationwide debates, and we still have those tapes. I see Mr. Nagamutu is talking about doing that for $260 million or some such thing, which we did on a much lesser budget, but that's irrelevant at the moment. We did not have push and sustenance because in Guyana you get labeled. If you take this stance like, oh, this constitutional, we can't. Then it's a PAP party. They do something else, or they with the PNC. So there were some divisions within our own ranks that after a while we just took steps and steps back, and the push wasn't there anymore. Because of and especially after the no confidence
And
motion.
then you went in various directions.
And we went in various directions. Mr. Jonas, Nadia Segar, they with Anog now. I am with the Civic. Terence Campbell briefly dipped and ran afterwards. Sorry, Terence.
Well, no, he did.
Yes,
he
he
did.
did, he
That's
did,
the
he did.
reality.
That's the
And
reality.
I still cuss him every
No,
day.
but it shows you how spineless some of our people are. The least thing they back down.
Yes.
The you had Mr. Marcel Gaskin.
Yes.
He had gone to the court. There was a time when it was suggested that he might be joining you in civic.
Well, he's there actually in spirit. I mean, he contributes ideas, but to be a more of a public figure, he would not do that at this time. But he is. I mean, maybe me and him converse all the time. I mean, as he says, the civic it's a loosely based thing. It's not we all meet at a conference board and take minutes and then it's not such. Maybe it will get to that. But Marcel is with us. If not in body, in spirits.
I don't know how spirits operate, and it's probably a good time because they operate singly.
Right.
Mr. Don Singh, Mr. Hugh Todd, thank you so much for
Thanks so much
Thank you
for
an
having
interesting
us.
hour.
Thank you having
Yes,
us.
it was quite
And of
interesting.
course, you're free to join me anytime you think that. Look, let's have another conversation
Sure. No
on
problem.
issues.
Thanks for the
So
invite.
thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
operators and viewers. Thank you. Good night, and I'll see you next week.